After the Miami Grand Prix qualifying session, Ferrari team principal Frederic Vasseur offered a clear-eyed analysis of the Maranello team's current form, especially in qualifying, where the SF-25 single-seater struggles to get the most out of the tires. While the issue may remind some of last year's SF-24, the characteristics differ then. The challenge was with the soft compound, but now the problem seems more structural. The team principal stressed that the issue is not a lack of potential, as the French manager is convinced it is there, but rather the difficulty in unlocking it. This results in underwhelming qualifying sessions, up to the point where Ferrari found itself even behind Williams at the Miami International Autodrome in Florida. The words of a visibly dejected Charles Leclerc perhaps reflect most clearly the reality of an SF-25 that struggles to balance its strengths with its weaknesses. The numbers from Miami qualifying are telling. Compared to Max Verstappen, Ferrari lost around 0.7 of a second in 4 corners, 0.2 in turn 1, another 1.5 between turns 7 and 8, and 3.5 between turn 12, where chronic understeer emerged, and the section before turn 16. Most of the gap, therefore, comes from the slow speed sections, where the SF-25 car shows its greatest weaknesses in this start of the 2025 Formula One Championship. In fact, both Williams and Haas were faster than Ferrari in those areas. While Ferrari continues to search for its identity, its rivals are making steady progress. The issue is not just absolute performance, but also the fact that Ferrari's current main strength, namely its straight-line speed, is clearly not enough to make a real difference. McLaren, for example, has often been praised for its versatility, despite suffering in terms of straight-line efficiency, and having opted for lower downforce configurations in recent rounds, it remains competitive in other areas. While not matching Red Bull's peak performance in fast sections, the MCL-39 single-seater typically makes up for it with overall balance, and that makes it a formidable competitor across most of the Formula One calendar. The SF-25 has made a modest step forward in high-speed sections, continuing the aerodynamic development path started with the SF-24. However, it still suffers from understeer in slow corners, partly due to overall weak mechanical grip. Charles Leclerc has emphasized this repeatedly. Beyond balance, what is truly missing is grip. Perhaps the most telling figure is that Charles Leclerc managed to post better sector times on used Pirelli tires than on a fresh set of compounds, failing to exploit the grip peak and therefore highlighting the qualifying weaknesses of the SF-25 car. These issues also affect race day. Starting too far back means getting stuck in dirty air and being forced to chase. At present, a situation that has also been seen 2 weeks ago in the Jeddah race, the SF-25's only real strength is its straight-line speed, similar to Mercedes, which typically runs low-drag setups. However, Ferrari struggles to capitalize on it as effectively, often failing to make equivalent gains in other performance areas. McLaren stands out for its adaptability. Red Bull, except in Miami, can count on excellent DRS performance and great pace in fast sections. A favorable calendar has helped, but the RB21 clearly has higher performance peaks than the Ferrari, even if Bahrain exposed some of its own weaknesses. From this picture, 2 key takeaways emerge. First, Red Bull aside, all of Ferrari's main rivals have made significant progress. Second, despite the fact that the SF-25 single-seater has gained about 6 km per hour on the straights compared to 2024, it has not shown similar improvements in either slow or fast corners. In high-speed corners, Mercedes has significantly reduced bouncing and improved in low-speed sections as well, especially in sequences of turns, thanks to a more efficient low-drag setup for the W16. McLaren has made a clear step forward in slow-speed corners, becoming a benchmark there, while still improving its straight-line performance with the MCL-39. In this context, the SF-25's lack of versatile downforce and its mechanical setup limitations reveal the car's core issues in terms of qualifying performance, especially on tracks where a balance between fast and slow sections is crucial. As a result, it becomes much harder to hit the ideal performance window, further highlighting its flaws. Setup work can mitigate some weaknesses, but on complex circuits that is not enough, as one compromise often leads to another issue. In the Miami Grand Prix race, Ferrari may show more competitive pace, especially since tire management becomes less critical, but starting too far back makes it difficult to build a solid race. Looking back on the Saturday sprint race in Miami, Ferrari saved itself with a good pit call in the 100-kilometer short event. The Englishman's race was slowed down by the usual understeer issues, also linked to the extreme setup. However, the excellent intuition of the Briton changed things, a decision that might have seemed risky but turned out to be spot on. Without the safety car intervention at the end, the 7-time Formula One world champion had a real chance of finishing the race in second place. In the first part of the sprint race, the superior pace of the McLaren cars on wet tires was evident. After a borderline start by Oscar Piastri, the papaya-colored cars got past Kimi Antonelli at the start and took control of the race. The two Woking drivers lapped in unison, being 0.3 faster than Max Verstappen and over a second quicker than Lewis Hamilton. Despite the brilliant third place in the end, the Briton experienced a nightmare in every corner on the intermediates. The 7-time world champion lost on average 0.6 in Sector 1 and 0.4 in Sector 2 compared to Oscar Piastri. The understeer going into Turn 1 limited traction on exit, where Lewis Hamilton was the slowest to get on the throttle. In Turns 6 and 7, he was also forced to carry less speed in the change of direction due to a rear end that was unstable and poorly supported in terms of aerodynamic load. Max Verstappen admitted he could not match the pace of the McLaren MCL39 cars in wet track conditions. The world champion, though not right behind the British cars, suffered from serious overheating issues at the rear. Tires outside the optimal window penalized him in the slower section of the track, namely turns 11-16, where he lost on average 0.2 due to poor traction. Lewis Hamilton, instead, began struggling shortly after the start, around lap 3. From that point, he started complaining over the radio about a lack of grip, confirmed by the telemetry data showing one of the highest average degradation rates in the Miami sprint race. The Englishman could rely on good top speed at the end of the straights, which allowed him to defend from Alex Albon and make up some of the time lost in traction in the slower parts. The Ferrari engineers and technicians now want to improve on what was shown in this first part of the Miami weekend. To do that, it has modified the setup by shifting the center of pressure to gain more front-end load. However, the lack of pace in wet conditions remains clear. The Maranello team will have to work on this aspect as well ahead of today's race at the Miami International Autodrome in Florida. It remains to be seen how to handle this entire scenario, as the Miami Grand Prix could prove really difficult for the Italian side. Last evening, the data from the sprint race in which the intermediate and soft tires were used was thoroughly analyzed by the Maranello team's engineers, even if the latter is unlikely to come into play even if it is dry. The unknowns that typify a sprint event are even greater this weekend, and that can often lead to opportunities that must be spotted and made use of, as was seen in Saturday's short race that brought an unexpected podium finish for Lewis Hamilton and Ferrari.